So one of the questions I've been asked is, what is Lent, this season that we're getting to enter? And I know that sometimes we have these words that are used in the church that are not used in the outside world. Words like Lent or Advent or Epiphany or Pentecost. And while people may know about Christmas or Easter, these other things may be a little bit of a mystery to them. And so this is a way in which the church orders time. And you know, we are so used to a world in which we measure the time by minutes and seconds and hours and days, and everything lines up on a calendar. And again, this is the church's way of saying, but there's another way of thinking about time, and there's another way of ordering it, and there's another way of doing things, and that way we believe is important. And one of the things that, in particular about the season of Lent, is the season of Lent to me is an antidote to, I think, what a lot of people view as a toxic positivity in some versions of Christianity, to where everything has to be happy all the time. And Lent is a season where we say, no, that's not the reality. That's not reality of life. That's not the reality of the Bible. The Bible makes lots of times for lament, and life is full of times where we grieve or we lament. And so, what is Lent? Well, Lent is a season of walking with Christ that leads to Easter, but you don't get to Easter without going to the cross. And so the way in which we practice Lent is it is a time of introspection. It is a time of looking inward. And, you know, there is, I think, in so much of the way in which we encounter the world, I mean, we're all our own hero in our own minds. And our minds are really good at justifying the things that we do. But Lent is a time where we look inward and say, where have I not lived up to the call God has given me? Where have I fallen short? Where have I missed the mark? And it's not one of these things to where we look in just to focus on ourselves. The reality is that this is a looking in so we can learn how to reach back out. Again, we in the Lutheran Church have a definition of sin to where it talks about sin is that which curves us inward. Well, we need to look at the place where we've been curved inward so we know what it is that has kept us from reaching out. And so there are several practices that people will often do during Lent, and you may choose one or many of these if you choose, but one of the things that is often a part of this is prayer. And prayer is that dialogue with God, of that open dialogue of, like a loving child would talk to a loving parent, you know, of saying, God, I want to follow your way. And give me your guidance, give me your leadership. Help me to learn what your way is. And even when it's hard, help me to have the courage to do it. Because often, you know, if following God's way were easy, everybody would probably do it. But it's not. Because there are so many other alternatives out there in the world, and many of those alternatives seem very attractive at various points. But it is a way of thinking about, well, how is my life lining up with God's will for my life? One of the other things that people will often do is they will often give things up. And, you know, it's the joke. You can always make the joke about, well, I'm going to give up chocolate, or I'm going to give up. But it is giving something up for a reason. You know, and often the giving up is, well, I want to give this up so that I take what I would spend on this and I give it to something that's meaningful. You know, so instead of doing this, I'm going to give the money I would use to do this to give to the church, or I'm going to use to give the money that I would use to give this to give to some other organization that does really good things. Or I'm going to change something in my life by doing something different. And so if you're going to give something up, it's with the intention of, but here's why I'm doing that. Here's the change I'm wanting to make. It's not just to make myself miserable or unhappy. It's I'm doing this for a reason. One of the things that's probably a little less common now than was for most of the life of the church is fasting. And again, to me, fasting should always be something that causes us, you've got to do it for the right reason. So I think so often for fasting, people do it and they make themselves miserable because they're not doing it for the right reason or for the right way. Fasting is so that we can enjoy life better. And I know that sounds weird, giving something up so you can enjoy life better, but I think we live in a time of such abundance and of, where we don't value the things that we consume, that we eat. And so it's a time of saying, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm giving this up so I can learn to have more joy, so I can learn to have, so I can learn to appreciate that which God has given me better. And to me, that can be a very valuable time. Now, it's not for everybody, and I know there are lots of reasons why people would not or cannot fast. But that is another practice that is out there. But for me, ultimately, it is a time where we come together, where we prayerfully look at ourselves and try to encounter where God is leading us in our life. And so in our church, we worship more. We worship an extra time a week. We worship on Wednesday nights during this season of Lent for 40 days. We will gather together in the week leading up to Easter. We'll gather together another couple times for Maundy Thursday, where we remember the Last Supper, and Good Friday, where we center on the cross. Yes, we're moving towards Easter, but we know this is also a journey that we make with Christ of saying, we too are learning what it means to pick up our cross and follow you as we walk through this season of Lent. And so we come together, we encourage one another, we pray for one another, and we support one another as we try to figure out how it is that we are to live, and what it is that we're to do as the people of God. And Lent is just one more season in the life of the church, and the life of our own lives, in the seasons of our own life, where we come together and where we look inward so that we can look outward. We look at the things that keep us from reaching out to others so that we may learn how to do that. We learn the things that separate us from God so that we may learn how to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. So I invite you to join us as we enter into this 40 days of Lent.